Dr. Billy Garvey, that is our second part episode on breaking cycles, episode number 80. What are people going to learn this week?
A really fun one, I think. We've had some great guidance coming in from listeners, actually, not just questions, but around practical application. How do you do every facet of it? Of PERMA, which was really beautiful. I took too long on the shorts just for a change. And then, yeah, mate, the highlight for me is always kind of when you give this kind of genuine, beautiful honesty about how you do this stuff. And I thought there was a lot of that this time too.
I think I was genuinely beautifully honest on a few things where I had no idea, and I call that out. I mince a couple of words, but I do my best. I try and do my best in here, Billy, so I appreciate that praise. Guys, we really hope you like this episode. For me, as someone learning, I really liked the examples from the parents and carers and teachers and GPs that sent them in. So I think that's one of the great values here. You'll get a really good understanding of the PERMA framework, and hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, I'm Billy, a developmental paediatrician.
And I'm Nick, a developing parent.
We're going to use scenes from iconic movies to talk about how we best support our kids.
This is Pop Culture Parenting.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.
Good morning, Dr. Billy Garvey. How are you this week?
I'm good, Nick. I'm good. How are you going? How's your week been?
My week's been pretty good. We're back for our second part episode on breaking cycles.
Yes, episode 80.
Episode 80. I know, 180. God, are we going to get there?
As in professional dart players?
No. I mean,
I've got the build for it.
Are we going to... I was thinking that too. Are we going to get to 180 episodes?
Yeah, surely. Well, I reckon we'll hit 100 before the end of the year, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a live ep for 100.
You haven't talked to me about it.
Well, mate, you came up the venue.
Where?
Remember you said that stadium? What's it called? What's it called again?
Oh, the Maracana in South America, the world's largest stadium. You want to do a live ep? It said polish up on your Portuguese. It's in Brazil.
Not going to sit at the top of the biggest event for long.
Oh, hopefully people are still listening after that intro. Guys, this is part 2. This is where we answer the questions on the episode 79 that Billy's already walked us through. Lots of questions this week, but Billy, I'm going to jump straight into the polls. We're going to keep you on track this week.
Okay.
Go on. You got something else to say?
No, we'll hold it. We don't want to change into try-hard comedy category podcast.
Please put a pin in that comedy gold I know you're sitting on over there. Billy, this week we asked people in the polls, do you ever feel like you're stuck in Groundhog Day? Unsurprisingly, 88% said yes.
Yeah, those superstars, 12% that don't. They should be the ones doing this episode.
They should be doing this podcast. And how do they?
Because I was a yes.
Yeah, I was a yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough though, isn't it? And we'll talk so we've got so what we've got coming up is some snappy shorts, but some beautiful questions, but also some beautiful advice about how families have done it and some people kind of chipping in that's really helpful. That's, to be honest, changed the way I do it a bit.
Yeah, I need examples, and I know a lot of the questions that came in, people asked for more examples. So plenty of those coming up. Billy, do you feel like you and your family are able to prioritise well-being? 41% of people said yes.
Mm. How did you feel about that answer?
Probably, I think by virtue of the things that make up well-being, your PERMA framework, I'm doing some of it, so I am prioritising it, but I think I've stumbled into doing some of it, didn't realise I was doing it a little bit. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I think I've prioritised. I think we do, but not all the time, you know?
No.
Not every day.
I mean, you have this beautiful way that you're like, these are the 5 things in my life that matter and they've got good order to them. And I feel like we're going to have a question towards the end, like we end on an awesome question, but there's a question in the middle about like finding balance. And I actually think that you achieve that. And I wonder how much you consciously have got your structure in like family, relationship, BJJ, work, you know, that kind of stuff. Podcast. Yeah. Is that the 5?
Yeah.
So, if you're like, kind of constantly kind of changing that balance and stuff. Or
Yeah.
whereas I feel like I'm just in survival mode.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, that's the bit that I find hard. But we'll go a little bit deeper on the third poll question.
Great. Which part of well-being do you find the most difficult to achieve for you and your family? You and your child, sorry. Now, we put up all of the options here. The options are
Instagram only lets you do 4, so I couldn't do 5, but I threw
meaning
them
and
together.
accomplishment
Yeah.
together.
Still didn't get top.
No. Engagement and flow, 34% was the toughest to achieve. Fair enough. Meaning and accomplishment combined, 26%. Positive emotions, 25%. And relationships, 16%.
Which ones do you reckon you find the hardest?
I think meaning and accomplishment.
Yeah, okay.
Meaning to me is like, that's like top of Maslow. Do you know what I mean?
Self-actualization.
Self-actualization. Like a lot of people in my situation, and a lot of the questions this week are people, kids similar ages to me, starting school last year, thinking like, it's survival. And I know you right now are doing a great job, but you've got Charlie, 8 months? 7?
Yes, I think he is 8 now.
Yeah. And Evie, just shy of,
3, coming up 3 in May.
Mate, I wouldn't expect you to be. No, I wouldn't expect it.
I'm not surprised you look so tired.
How old are you?
yeah. When we started, you were in your 30s. But you've somehow.
Yeah, that's just me. And there's a parent in here in one of the questions achieving a lot.
Yes.
Many children.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, it's. But like they've said, they're like, no, it's not. All it sort of
seems.
Yeah, all it seems. Yeah. Like you say, I don't know anyone knocking it out of the park.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Like in fits, like I like celebrating those that do something really great, but damn, it's hard.
Totally. And that's like one of the origins of the podcast is obviously all the stuff I see in clinic, but it's also this like thing that I have in my head where I'm like, if you tapped every parent that you walk past on the shoulder and said, you're doing this perfectly, no one's honestly going to say yes. And it's not about aiming for perfect. There's so much that we can do from a theoretical evidence perspective that can make things easier. And it's funny, like with this episode, I wasn't sure if it would land. Like it's so funny. I like spend so much time in the lead up and then it goes out into the world. And I'm always just waiting for that one message that said that was really helpful. And that window is a real window of anxiety for me because I'm like, oh man, is this the one that's going to be the one that's not good? And then when that one message comes in, I'm like, sweet, it was worth it. Like it was worth the time.
It's literally worth it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you put in the time. You put in way more time than me.
Well, we'll get to it. Yeah, well, it's interesting because that segues beautifully into which one I find the hardest.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't ask you.
It's fine. It's fine. No, you've just spent an hour helping parent the kids in the chaos. So it's what you do more than what you say, mate. But I have no problem with meaning because like I do this podcast. I find a couple of hours every single day to do this podcast, all the work around it. Like AV1 have been amazing at helping out with the video and audio editing, but because it's for me, like it's so much of my meaning comes from doing this work. It's the same as my clinical work. Like I get so much meaning. I feel good about myself as a person. I remember sitting in a lecture theatre talking about, kids' mental health and all this stuff. And people are like, how come we're doing this? Like, why are we all motivated to do this? And people are like, I want to make the world a better place. Kids are really important. And I believe all that stuff. But what I do makes me feel really good about who I am. And that's what we're trying to find for kids as well. But it took me years. Like I was a hospital cleaner, I drove forklifts, worked in factories, I did all that stuff. And I'm just really lucky that the job that I'm in, I enjoy every minute of it. But the podcast exists because our wait lists are getting longer. And I'm just like, this is wild. So my meaning is not a problem. My problem is I have two really vulnerabilities in PERMA. One is relationships.
Gotcha.
We just talked. I'm lucky if I get to see you, once a week, and that's my closest relationship, like outside of Annalise. And Annalise is a phenomenal partner, but I'm constantly talking about how important relationships are, but I just really struggle because I'm so far in the balance of the meaning bit. Accomplishment, I'm hopeless.
What do you mean?
I don't celebrate any accomplishment that I make. I'm constantly, where's the next thing? Do you know what I mean? You know this. I never look and go like, and there's this amazing advisory committee that sits around the pod, and I'm like, you know, using all of their generosity and their expertise to think about how we get better reach. And they're so good because they're often like, you're doing it. Like what you guys have done is amazing. Like, you know, you should celebrate that. But every element of my life, I'm really bad. And, you know, I've got to be careful that I don't give that to Evie. That I don't, you know, and Charlie as well, obviously, but I've got to be careful that I don't, you know, push onto Evie because I got it from my mum. My mum was just like, got to survive. She worked 3 jobs. She was like trying to keep food in the house, trying to keep the power on, all that stuff. And she just never sat down and went, I'm actually doing a really good job here. And I can't do that to myself. Like,
mate, come and hang around with me. If you want to see someone pat themselves on the back, you're going to find someone more than me. Let me tell you. A lot of back slapping over here.
Like, singing self-praises into the mirror.
If you want to hear, I can externalise them if you want. I can tell you a few more. I know
tell
what
me
you're
all the
saying.
great things about Nick.
I know what you're saying.
But totally. But I think
like,
it
where
also
do you
goes
find
back
the
to
time?
it also goes back to the relationship stuff as well. I think it's really important that you have people around you who elevate you. I think that's a nice minimum bar for relationships. And I want Evie to see that. I want Evie to see that I spend time with you because you help elevate me. And also Evie should see that in relationships. And that's what the perma bit is like, how do relationships improve your life? And we've got some questions where they're not coming up, and that can be really challenging.
Okay. Speaking of questions, we usually go into the longs right now. Oh, no, we're going to the shorts. Sorry.
Okay.
But this week, we're just going to get we had a nice note from someone.
Yes.
So we're just going to read this one out. Thank you very much, guys. Dear Nick and Billy, not a question, just a thank you. Groundhog Day pod was a masterpiece. I'm a positive psychology podcast fan and familiar with the PERMA acronym, but this is a recording I will return throughout my life. Sorry. Not a parent, just a GP who regularly recommends the pod to patients when I have the time. Nick's audible feeling of overwhelm is both relatable and hilarious. I do get overwhelmed. Listening during my run and the flow state and accomplishment chat got me sprinting up the hill like Rocky Balboa. Thanks again for what you do. Might have a question when I'm hopefully a parent in about 6 months' time.
Bam.
Congratulations,
Yes,
Mr.
amazing.
GP.
It's quite funny because I pick like all the stuff that's going to go in and send it to you in the evening. And I reckon if you were picking it, you know, the kind of praise for the podcast wouldn't make it in as much.
Yep.
Like I love picking stuff that's like, this podcast is amazing. And I put it in and then you have to read it out.
Yep.
So it's nice to hear the positive bit about that. Very quickly, amazing. Like, and the people who listen to this don't have kids yet are phenomenal. one of the reasons I included that is the medical system is upside down. GPs are the most important specialists there are. They like the more specialised you become, you probably know this professionally in your world, the narrower your knowledge is. Mine, I couldn't look after a kid with like a health problem, like, you know, asthma or something like that. I'm very narrow, whereas GPs have to cover everything.
The breadth is wild.
Yeah, and I do a lot of work with GPs and they're phenomenal. So I hate that juster. I used to say that about myself as well. I'm just
no.
But yes, give me some shorts.
All right, let's get in the shorts, Billy. You're already wearing shorts. It's pretty hot here today in Melbourne where we are. It's going to be a balmy 38. So let's get this podcast done before we start sweating. Okay, Billy, how do you find more hours in the day?
Ooh, great question. What do you think? How do you find more hours? So have you ever looked at it and gone, cool, we've got to change it up?
Yep.
Yeah, and what do you do?
With my partner, in a parenting sense, we start to divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And a lot of ruthless prioritisation.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's that ruthless prioritisation where you just like cut, you know, and all that stuff. And like I've said many times, it's not how much time you spend with your kids, it's how you use that time that you're with them. And so as long as you've got some protected time, like ideally every day, and then those sanctuaries, I think that's where the kind of positive psychology comes in, is just those moments of joy, those moments of connection, those moments to elevate kids. Yeah. You know, are really important. And I would say like the most important bit, like obviously you've got to feed kids and make sure they get sleep and all that stuff. But yeah, that's right above it.
Yeah, and the bit about like being prioritisation, like everyone's like, oh yeah, easy to say. Yeah, I find that I actually find the decisions the hardest thing, and then living with the decisions I find really hard, and it gives me anxiety about what I do and don't prioritize. So it's kind of hard either way. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
totally, mate. I can't say
like,
no
I
to
hate it.
anything. Any opportunity comes past me, I'm like, I can't say no to that, and I sacrifice time with my family and balance because of it.
Yeah.
So it's really hard, but I think that is what I'm working towards, and I think you do too.
Yep. Billy, having a child with autism means everything is about their well-being. How do you break the cycle for me and us time?
Have to. The hardest thing I do in clinic is convince parents that they've got to be a bit selfish and prioritise themselves, but you have to for the kid. That's the thing.
What do you
that's
mean?
what I'm trying to find them. So often parents will be really stressed and they're like, if they were sleeping better, if they were just listening to me more, if they were succeeding more at school, if they weren't self-harming, if they weren't so anxious or whatever. But I can see the parent is drowning quicker than the child. And so what I've got to say is like, how can I convince this caregiver, this parent, to look after themselves? Teachers are the same. Teachers are out there just like drowning because they're overwhelmed with like 20 plus kids in a classroom, and over a quarter of them are all really struggling with like clinical, this is why we use evidence and not just my opinion, clinical problems, like clinical levels of mental illness. But those educators have to be sustained, those parents have to be sustained, they've got to play the long game, and that's why you've got to cut out and be like, cool, I've got to do stuff for me. And I feel selfish. I've got hardly any time. I exercise at least once a day. That's how I protect my mental health. But I also need to be like, I've got to have some windows of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Yeah, just reflecting upon your exercise. Yeah, it's a good point. It's your time. Yeah, love it.
But
love
I
it.
have to, like I could very easily feel like a jerk about that and be like, I should be helping out more around the house. I should be spending more time with the kids, but I have to do it.
Hey, what do you do when it's a loved one causing the negative energy and they don't want to help? They don't want help.
So what do you reckon?
No idea. I mean, ask questions of
Yeah,
them.
beautiful.
I don't know. Hey, you happy at the moment with this? Do you want
I
it
really
to
like
change?
that actually.
I don't know.
No, it's beautiful because what we often do in those situations is we
Give
go in and
advice.
we're like, I want you to change.
Yeah.
But actually, if you want to get any change, like from a motivational interviewing perspective, from a relational practice perspective, you have to really genuinely understand the perspective of the other person.
Yeah.
And then the trick is, why would they want to do it? Why would they want to change? Why would they want to be different with their kids? Why would they want to have a different approach to their own mental health? Why would they want to do that? Because it can't be because why you'd want to do it. And this is what we struggle with in clinic. The parents like, I wish they would listen to me because of X, Y, and Z. The teachers, I wish they would, respect me more because the classroom would be easier. But why would the kid want to do that? And that's how you can really connect
Can you
with
give an
people.
example? Just say the teacher, the parent, the teacher and the respect one. Just break it down.
So the kid in the classroom who's blowing up all the time or really negative and withdrawn, let's say that because we do the blow up all the time.
Yep.
The kid in the classroom or the kid in the house that's shutting down all
Negative,
the time and just
withdrawn.
negative and like always cracking it, always being like, I'm sick of this, I don't love you, whatever, all that negativity. The easy thing is to come in and go, do you realise how much I do for you? Like, I'm trying to fix this for you. Like, how dare you talk to me like that? I've done so much for you. You've got no hope of changing someone because of that. And all you have to do is put yourself in that kid's shoes where you're like seeing the world in a negative way and you genuinely believe that. You don't have faith in your relationships, whatever. And so someone doing that is not going to help. Whereas if you can lean in and be like, the point is connection. I want to understand your perspective. I'm genuinely curious about how you're going. That's the step before change your attitude.
Okay.
Because when you understand and then you find the hook and then you're like, actually, this kid, there's always a reason. Like I've said this so many times. I've never not found a reason in a kid who is struggling with that. Now, sometimes it takes me years in clinic to find that reason, but there's always a reason that the kid is negative, isn't withdrawing, is acting out or whatever. And the trick is find the reason.
Okay. Yeah, just a little honesty bit here. That started creeping in, that language with me as my kids get older. Not done in a super aggressive way, but like I said the other day, can you grab my T-shirt? And they're like, why do I need to grab it? And I said, I'll be honest. I said because I like to do things for you, like, make dinners and do those sorts of things. And I just got in there and minced my words. That was terrible. but I do it. It's crept in. I've said it probably a little bit more sternly on other things. I'll be really honest with you.
So
Just in that moment, it'd be like
you've
38 degrees, and I'll be shitty, and I'll say something really, not aggressively, but I'll be like, oh, well, like I do this, this, and this, and I'm like, my kid's so young, and I'm already doing that. Like, I got to nip this.
So there's 3 steps to it. You're at the first step. You're catching yourself afterwards.
Yeah.
Next, you'll catch yourself during it. Then you'll catch yourself before it.
Okay, cool.
I was the other night, mate. I was like doing the solo. Annalise does a 14-hour shift every Monday now. I'm like worked a full day, come home, just like already exhausted. Evie's like another story, another this, another face story. And I'm like pushing it a little bit out because I'm like, fair enough, I haven't any time with you. And then I was in bed with her and she's like, please. And I was like, we've done a couple of bonus ones. Good night, gorgeous. And she's just like, okay, go away then. And I was like, oh. But I caught myself during it because I was like, don't say anything. Just be like, good night, gorgeous. And walk out of there because I'm like, it's not a time to correct her. It's not a time to let how I felt in that moment come in on it.
Yeah.
But it's hard. There's heaps of times I fail at that and I just crack it and I'm like, eat the food.
Now, upon reflection, I'm doing it, a lot more than I thought I was. Anyway, let's keep moving. A lot of other things I'm doing wrong. We'll get to those too. Hey, Billy, I'm struggling to return to work after parental leave. I feel like I no longer have quality family time. Yeah.
Yeah,
so I wasn't sniggering. I'm just like,
no, totally. You had this. For Evie, I got the glory of 1 week off of parental leave, and they changed the contract for Charlie. I got 2 weeks, so I didn't have to deal with that because it never really happened.
Not an issue.
But how did you find it, mate? Because your workplace is great. You had this solid period off.
Had both. Had my first kid. We had 2 weeks, and then they restructured it. And the second kid, I got 16 weeks. I thought, let's have 5 more kids.
I just say, you were nailing life. Huh? You were nailing life.
Oh, that time, mate. I'll tell you what.
Half your backyard was growing food.
It was COVID. Right? Henrietta was sick during that period. We were home. I had the most unbelievable vegetable patch because we were all stuck at home and had all this time off. I was parenting. I was.
Totally. You still are.
Mate, aspects of... I don't miss COVID. I miss aspects of the lockdown.
Well, that's the funny thing, because at the start of the app, when I was like, what are Como's 5? What are Nick's 5 things again? I was remembering gardening, and I was like, don't bring up the garden because it'll make you feel bad. But you were like on the track to being a social media superstar in gardening.
It was amazing. Yeah. Amazing. It's one of those it's back when everyone was making sourdough.
Yeah, totally.
It's in Melbourne where we are. Like, what do we do? Anyway,
but how did you find coming off the back of that and being like, oh, I had all this time? How did you cope with that? Like this person sending in.
Tough. Stuff takes a real hit, I'll be honest. This is going back a few years, I can probably say, the focus wasn't on work at that stage and work took a hit. Yeah. Like I wasn't performing well. And found that tough because I tie a lot of my, maybe it's self-esteem or not, but praise from work and stuff, and it wasn't getting it because I couldn't do it. And I'm not telling this person to not go gung-ho at their job, but it's just really tough. The whole thing's tough. And something took a hit, and it was probably at that stage a bit of work, to be honest, and that's what it was, as opposed to because I was trying to I gotta be careful. Each to their own. But I did.
No, I think it's good advice.
It's just honest.
Yeah,
but that was my go. It's totally different for everyone, and I found it bloody hard. Yeah. That's not my advice. I'm not saying anyone should do that at all. Nothing. But I just For those who don't know, a bit of background, my partner was quite sick at the time, so it made my focus at home. So that's why. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that's exactly why I'm not saying for this person, prioritise. No, it was really different. Yeah. Had a very narrow focus. Yeah. And a tough period.
But it talks about that, what you were talking about before, that prioritisation, what's the...
Yeah, it was done for me, Billy. I didn't have to make many choices.
Oh, mate, it was a heroic effort from you guys going through that window.
Yeah, it was tough. Yeah. So that's why. So my return to work's a lot different to everyone else's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But still an important
that's my
about
experience.
How do you still survive that and get to that positive components?
Yeah. Something, you're spinning plates and sometimes the plates fall. Anyway.
Yeah.
Really burning through the shorts here, aren't we, Billy? Do you actually want to give this person some meaningful advice and not just my reflection?
I'm
sorry.
No, mate.
God. Hey, my dad is old school. My way or the highway with the kids. How do I break that?
2 options.
Go.
You do it with stealth. So I meet heaps of dads like this in clinic.
Yep.
And I'm always in a fork in the road. I'm like, do we do this via stealth? And what I mean by that is the dad almost isn't aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that we go, cool, what we're going to do is figure out how do we get dad on board with a shift in the way that he parents without like calling him out on it. And how you do that is you just go back to the relationship and you go, sweet, what I'm going to do. And I've done this a few times recently actually where I'm like, what does dad enjoy doing? You know, and get the kid connecting and all that stuff and really get that relationship humming with that child that is they're butting heads about it. And then you kind of just gently introduce a shift. So you gently introduce like, how about he picks this thing? How about he chooses like what dinner looks like? How about he kind of picks an activity? How about he participates in the morning routine and all that stuff? Or if the other parent, often a mum, thinks that it's going to be a better approach, you talk about it. And so, as you said before, you start from the kind of perspective of the dad. He's really annoying me, never listens to me. Common thing I hear is so much in parenting talks. He doesn't respect me. I wish he respected me. He should respect me. Well, I respected my dad. If I talked to my dad like that, stuff would happen.
Yep.
So you don't dismiss that. You
No,
go, okay,
can't.
cool, that's where you're coming from.
It's the grounding, yeah.
But then the trick with the second option is you go, how about for a few weeks we just try it like this? Not saying change forever.
Yeah.
Let's just try it a bit different. Let's just try and shift away from the kind of authority, like because I said so. Let's just try this. Just see how we go. These two handsome guys on a podcast threw this idea out there. But you have a conversation about it where you start with the connection and perspective taking, and then you go, let's just do a test. So anything that we do in clinic, we never say this is how it's going to be forever. Starting medication, shifting schools, changing an approach.
Yeah.
It needs to work within a couple of months at the maximum. Every single day I'll meet kids that have been trialling a strategy for 6 months, a year, and I go, is it working? And they go, I don't know, or no. And I go, stop it. Just stop that strategy. Let's reshift it. So behavioural changes often in 3 to 4 weeks you'll see a benefit. So you just want the dad to be like, let's just for a month, let's just try it a little bit different.
Yeah. One thing, I can't remember what episode it was a long time ago, a step in with that one, you say to engage, call it dad because it is in this instance. How do you think we're going? Are you enjoying this? Like, are you kind of liking this? And then dad will be like, no, because he doesn't respect me. You go, yeah, it's pretty annoying, isn't it? How about, you know, that sort of leading into like, yeah, well, why don't we try and change it because I can tell it's annoying you and kid's not liking it.
Yeah, totally. Evie's kicking off a bit at the moment just because she's hardly seeing Annalise at all and she doesn't see me that much. And so she's kicking off and the temptation is to be like she's misbehaving. But if I can actually go, actually, we've got to change something. And so, yeah, one thing that we did, like just yesterday, Evie said to Annalise, you're Charlie's friend and Daddy's my friend. And so I was like, oh, God. So this weekend, no matter what happens, Annalise and Evie are going to go do something fun together that we're not going to be there, you know, because that's really important. She's not misbehaving because she's like, stuff you guys. She's just struggling with the change in what's happening. So that's, you know, that's the point is if you can shift that dad into the relationship, you'll often get that change as well.
Shift them into the relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
As opposed to the, yeah, they're annoying me or because I said so stuff.
Yep. Okay. Next question. I'm going to move you on just a little bit, and I've been guilty of talking here, right? Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every time I'm like, oh, this long's not going to be, this part 2 is not going to be that long.
Yep. How to have positive emotions when you're overwhelmed by the kids' lack of contribution and messiness.
Yeah, it's hard. So age is important in this one. The younger kids, like you've just, the younger kids, I think a little bit of it is acceptance. Like our house is like that at the moment. Like it gets messier way quicker than you can clean it up. And I was just saying to you before, I like stubbed my toe on something. I was like, that's the most annoying thing about my parenting journey is like stuff, there's just stuff lying around everywhere all the time. Whereas Annalise is better at being like, yeah, that's just how it is. When I get to it, I can. I think in older kids, it goes back to the meaning bit of PERMA and thinking about how can I give you meaning in some responsibility and ownership of how we function as a family. And a bit of that is that stuff. If you pick the priority that go, and my mum was like this all the time, man. She just was so stressed about not having the time to keep the house like churning. And so there was constant conflict and battle with me and especially my little brother around like just fighting. It was all the time.
What? How old?
The whole time, mate.
Okay.
Like the whole time. Whole time. She was just like, I used to get angry because I'd hardly get any time with her. And the nights that she wouldn't be like waitressing or whatever, she'd be like doing ironing and washing and all that stuff. And I used to blow up at her. I'd be like, we should be doing stuff together. Like I want to do stuff as a family and all that. But she was just constantly in chaos trying to keep the house going. And I look back and I cringe at how I was about it. But I just... You know, that's the experience of a lot of families that I meet in clinic. They're just like trying to get through the day, and you know, like it's hard because I wish that I could go back and give my mum permission to just kind of try and ignore some of that stuff and just kind of lean into the relationship with us. Because I think we all think we're going to have more time than we do with our kids and our family. So. Yeah, anyway, without getting too deep on that.
No, it's good. Thank you. Hey, Billy, why do we never discuss the impacts of co-regulation on parents and teachers? It is exhausting.
It is. I'll try it yes, and very gently. I think that the alternative is more exhausting because the alternative is that things don't improve. The alternative is that you constantly stay in that conflict, me versus them, battle on stuff, dysregulation, stress, anxiety, all that stuff. So it's work at the start, but it pays off in the long run. And there's amazing educators that have learned the translation of the science of co-regulation into classroom environments.
Nice.
And the families as well that do it really well are the ones that are like, sweet, we're just going to learn the steps here of co-regulation. And we know people like that episode, the Jurassic Park one, for that reason. It kind of goes through what it's like. And yes, it can seem harder at the start, but it pays off.
Okay. Hey, Billy, can gaming be considered as flow or is this a false positive?
Great question. I want to do an episode on gaming, but I just don't know if enough people will get much out of it. But yes, so there's decades of scientific research about this. Some people would argue no, some people would argue yes, some people would say it's different to flow, it's actually immersion. The trick with gaming and flow is function. So I don't mind, this is one thing that I do probably once a fortnight. I will play PlayStation. You're not a big gamer, but I grew up gaming a lot. I'm playing a game called Cyberpunk at the moment, which might add to the podcast, but and it has an immersion component to it. I don't think it really has flow. The challenge is they've actually made video games that do have flow because if you remember about...
What's an example of a flow one?
To be honest, they're none of the really popular ones because the thing that a video game has to have to maintain flow is it has to have effort and challenge that's constantly stretching you. So think about the tennis player who's playing at the Australian Open. If he's playing someone, you and I, there's no flow in it for him.
No.
If it's number one ranked seed playing with number two, they're in flow because it's constantly stretching his ability. Yeah. And that's the trick with our kids in flow as well. You have to constantly stretch their ability. And video games very rarely have that. They can be, because if the effort is too high, it's frustration and anxiety and stress. If the effort's too low, it's boredom. So the effort required to succeed is really important, and it's much easier to achieve that when you're like learning a piece on piano or a puzzle that we're going to hear about. The problem with video games is that they're more interested in kind of keeping you engaged than they are in like stretching.
Okay, that's the immersion versus the flow.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, nice one. Hey, Billy, I found PERMA with my kids pretty easy, but now they're teenagers, it's much harder.
Totally. Yeah. And I can talk about it from a clinical perspective, but not a personal one. And maybe the podcast will stop. What have we got, a decade before? No, less
Could
than
be
that.
a while. Oh, don't.
Before when he's a teenager. So yes, maybe in 7 years if the podcast stops, you'll know why. Because the real world hit. But yes, really, really hard. And there's certain components of it I think that are worth leaning in. Teenagers, will seek meaning outside of the family. So that's the thing. Meaning is very easy to contain within the family, and relationships within the family. When you enter your teen years, you seek independence outside of your family. And so a lot of kids really stumble there. And so that's where a lot of anxiety and self-harm and everything kicks up, because there's a vulnerability in not succeeding in finding your meaning, relationships, positive experiences, accomplishment outside of it.
Can't picture it. Struggling with prep pickup. Hey, Billy, how do you stop the scrolling and the mindlessness of scrolling? It's an unpleasant addiction.
Yeah, I'm in that pocket at the moment. Just like, I don't know what you're like, but I'm just like working till midnight and then like on my phone just as my downtime. So there's two things to it. Why? Why is it happening? Is a really good thing to think about before you think about changing it. And same as with our kids, if they're doing a lot of that stuff where they're playing heaps of video games or they're really like withdrawing from normal healthy stuff, why? Often, like for me, it's when the more stressed I am, the more I do it. So I can pick that up. I can be like, cool, I'm having a tough week because I find myself like watching a lot of TikTok or whatever. Or the other gauge for me is wines, like how much I'm just hanging for a wine. I've got a great question on that actually. And then when you've kind of addressed that, the thing to think about is how can I put something instead that's easy? So it's not like I'm going to start reading Tolstoy before I go to bed, because you're just going to look at that tome every time and go, the phone it is. But how can I gently move away from something that's so negative? And that's the problem with scrolling and stuff, is that it talks about, that's a real apathy window of like, I'm just mindless. It's the opposite to flow. And that's the problem with that stuff, is that it doesn't engage you. It's rumination. You're not really going to be lost to time and, at one with an activity and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So you're looking to be lost at time. Yeah, okay, I love it. I want to get to yes. And we're in a flow here, Billy. Hey, Billy. How do you prioritise which cycles to break?
Yeah, great question. So we talk about this in clinic. There's two options: easy win, or the thing that's the most challenging to your family.
Easy win.
Yeah.
Low hanging fruit.
So easy win is important, especially for the dad that's a bit dug in.
Yeah, okay.
Don't be like, we're going to sort out
pick
the
your
toughest
battles.
bit.
Yeah.
We're going to have an easy win.
Show a bit of success.
Yeah, show a bit of success. You know what? I reckon it'll be pretty easy to make meal times a bit more fun.
Yep.
And then we'll get to the most challenging thing. We're really banging heads with our teenager.
Okay. Hey, Billy, how to shift your origin of meaning. It used to be work for me in healthcare, but now it's so poorly staffed that I don't do a good job. Now constantly overwhelmed and burnt out.
Amazing. So from a developmental perspective, we understand this, and I think it works for adults as well. There's kind of 3 steps to finding meaning. The first is you embed yourself within a culture. So the kids grow up in the culture that they're around, the community that's around them. They kind of sit within that. Think about the girls. They're in a neighbourhood. You're in a court. That's a big part of their culture. You've got family traditions. You've got all the things you do. And then they engage with education settings, childcare, school, kinder. What they're learning about is what is meaning in our community, in our culture. Then what happens is kids start internalising, and Winnie will be doing this now. She'll be thinking about who she is, what matters to her, and all that stuff. The third step is the important one about how we find meaning. We then go out and participate and contribute to that community. Now, what this person has been doing is they've been embedded within the medical culture. They've thought about, yes, this is something I want to participate in. And then they've gone out and worked really hard and made lots of sacrifices to contribute to that culture. The trick is, if you're getting stuck and you're like, I don't want my meaning to be here anymore, or when kids leave the house, that can happen, a relationship ends, a child moves school, a child stops playing the sport where they found the meaning, go back and embed yourself within a different part of the community and culture. Help the child kind of reflect on what's important to me, what matters to me, what do you enjoy? It goes back to our 2 questions. What do you enjoy? What are you good at? Find that stuff. And then how can you contribute to it? How can that be a part of your meaning? How can your effort, be something that you see as a challenge? I want to get better at footy. I want to be someone who volunteers. I want to do this stuff. And it's got to be something that you put sustained effort into that you then find benefit and success from. And that's how meaning comes. It's the same as for our kids, the same as for you. You with BJJ. You know, that was, if you think about it the first time, the first step you took is you learnt about that culture and that community. And then you gently embedded yourself within it. And then you thought, yeah, sweet, this meets a fitness thing. It meets a technical ability component for me. It meets a social engagement.
Yep.
And then you contribute to that culture, don't you?
Yep.
You participate, it's a part of you. And so some of your meaning comes from that. And having multiple sources of meaning is really important.
Yep.
So you will help, especially Winnie now, kind of think about all of the communities she's been a part of. Where does her identity sit within that, and how does she contribute to it? And school is a big jump for her. She's still finding her feet with that of like, what does me being in the classroom mean for me? What's my contribution to it? Yeah. You know, and that meaning in school is a really important one to land. And once again, every single day I'd meet a kid that has not succeeded in that landing yet, and school is not a positive experience for them because they have no meaning there. Meaning often comes way before. So first step at succeeding at school is feeling safe and secure in that environment. Second step is meaning. Fifth step, sixth step is learning.
Right, because if you skip the other ones, you'll be dysregulated, can't concentrate.
Yeah, kids won't learn if they don't feel safe, but kids will be very reluctant to participate if they don't see themselves in that setting as contributing and having meaning. Oh. So that's the trick with Winnie now, is you don't just go, cool, you're safe and secure, now learn English. It's like, I want you to feel like you contribute to this class, and our teacher will be doing that, but you can reinforce it as well. And be like, you have meaning here because you contribute to the school community. This is what you do here. This is why you're important in this community.
What are examples of what my kid might be doing, Billy, for the listeners?
So, yeah, she might be someone who looks after one of her friends that's a bit nervous there.
Yep.
She might have a role in the classroom that says, you know, Winnie's the person that does this. She helps with this. She looks after, you know, once you get older, she's on the other side of this now, but the buddy system is really good for that.
She loves the buddy system.
So the buddy system is awesome when it
much.
catches the kid that's really struggling and makes him a buddy. Do you know what I mean? It's not the kid who looks after everyone naturally. They almost get no benefit from the buddy system because they're innately like that already.
So the older kid gets a benefit from being the buddy?
Definitely. Meaning. They have meaning. They have meaning. But the problem is what we do is we go, Samantha's awesome at looking after everyone else. She'd be a perfect buddy. It doesn't elevate her much. But Billy, who's a rat bag and driving us all crazy, do you know what I mean? And just thinks about himself and is really selfish and has a big head. But really good hair. I had to throw myself a bone somewhere. He will benefit the most from having meaning in this community because it will elevate him.
Did you get that from when you were a childcare worker?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you would have.
It was always the trick. Yeah, there's a whole... I haven't said this on the podcast yet, but about 6 months ago I got asked to write a book, and I was like, this has got to be a stitch up. But there's a chapter on it because it's this one amazing kid that we'll talk about in the podcast another time. But there's one amazing kid, the most difficult kid I've had in 6 years of childcare, who I butted heads about. Yeah, and he taught me why meaning's important.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, Billy. Okay, we've got a couple more shorts and we're going to bust into the longs. Okay. I can find the capacity for positivity for my kids, but have none left for my marriage.
We've got a long about this as well. But yeah, we got a few questions like this. Tough stuff. Really tough.
Tough stuff.
I'm a little bit like this. Annalise is amazing, so not with her. But I hold adults to such a higher standard of expectation than I do with kids. Every single kid I meet, I can give them leeway, and I'm like, you're a kid. But I think it's the hard thing is that it's harder to be compassionate for adults, and it's harder to be compassionate when you're like, you should be doing more, you should be contributing more, you're making this harder and all of that stuff. It's really challenging.
Wow.
But, you know, it's a really important thing to acknowledge that it is really tough, and you can get really caught in dysfunctional cycles with another adult that you're parenting with or co-parenting.
Yep.
I see so many separated parents that have just got this real battle.
Co-parenting means...
Sorry, separate. We did a whole thing on it, but
I know we
didn't go
did.
much into it. Yeah, but what I'm talking about is the constant conflict of like, I don't speak to his dad, and he has him every second weekend. Like, that's what I went through, and just I grew up in it. Constant conflict. And they were just caught up in this pattern, and it had a hugely negative impact on me and my brothers, because it was just, you kind of almost subconsciously think that's a normal adult relationship. But the relationships that we role model in front of our kids, most importantly with our partner, are what they will learn to expect as a normal relationship. And that's the challenge in it, is that if you and Henry are constantly battling in front of the girls, they're going to be like, sweet, that's normal. Do you know what I mean?
That's
They're not going to go,
expectation.
hang on a second, these guys should be loving to each other. They should be considerate. And that's hard. So it is this thing that, like, I don't know if that's helpful, but thinking about actually, even though my priority is my kids, the constant conflict and battle that I'm having with their dad or with their mum in front of them is actually having a negative impact on them. So for them, we need to work on this. Also for you and all that stuff, but it actually is the detrimental impact. That is a adverse childhood experience, is household dysfunction.
Okay. Hey, Billy, going to finish with one. Need help with yelling cycles. You yell, so I yell, then we all yell.
You guys aren't like this, and I work really hard. We're actually not like this, but I grew up like this. I grew up where it was just Irish passion in the house. That was, everyone had big emotions. But yeah, it goes back to it's what we talked about in the podcast previously, that negative coercion cycle of like battle. I'm going to win. Everyone's trying to win. And so you yell, you escalate, you dysregulate together, all that stuff. And being like, actually, if one of us is failing, we're all failing. Like if one of us is getting in trouble, if one of us is butting heads, if one of us is getting angry or anxious or withdrawing, that's a focus for all of us. And you can build that in the softer times as well. Like with everything, we never sing the Levy out and say she stuffed up at something, so there's a consequence. We're always like, if something's not working, it's because of us as a team.
Yeah, you've made me think about this one a lot. Like, because we had a real hitting problem.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet, but I've sort of come to acknowledge that if it's come to hitting, I've missed the moment and I can't then impugn, I can't punish the kid because I could have been in there a bit earlier and I've actually tried to get in there a bit earlier before the hands start throwing.
Yeah.
And it's helped.
Yeah, and well, why? Like Evie's doing this at the moment with Charlie. There's a reason why, and it's actually our responsibility, not hers, to address it.
Yeah, because they're looking for some connection and...
they're just struggling in the moment. They see this big response out of it and all that stuff. But yeah, we'll do a future topic totally on that because that gets asked a lot.
Oh, hitting sucks. It's tough. Billy, we're into the longs. So if you're a first-time listener, we have just gone through the shorts. Usually a bit punchier, but that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Good discussion. Now we're taking the long, complex questions. So if you've got long, complex questions, listen to the first part of an episode and then within the next 2 weeks, you can ask us a question and send it through, and this is where Billy answers it. All questions are anonymised. Sometimes I bugger up if it's a mum or a dad on a thing and I say he and she. I shouldn't. There's no reason because I don't know who's sent the thing through. So we anonymise it for you, so don't stress, and we change names a little bit here and there as well, Billy. Anyway, we love these questions. They're longer and complex, but often applicable to a lot of people. So let's rip in, Dr. Billy. Billy, such a bad start. Can only be better from here, Billy. Onwards. Okay. Any advice on how to get out of negative cycles with your partner after having kids? I feel like we are broken. We've put everything we've got into our kids, our 2 kids, but we have nothing left for each other. I know this rubs off on our kids, especially our 3-year-old. He picks up on the tension even when nothing is said. I find it hard to be a good parent when we are with the kids together because I'm so hyper aware of the emotions. I don't want it to end, neither does my partner. I want to work on this to improve for our kids. For context, I feel like a good parent when I am with them alone, patient, kind, supportive, but I can't access this as effectively in his presence. Any advice would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, amazing. So what do you think about that? What would your advice be? A mate comes to you and says, hey, nailing this parenting, but just when we're doing it together, I'm really struggling.
Oh, geez, I didn't think you were going to ask me this question. If you came and said to me, so it's you come and said to me, I'd be like, I'd probably show a bit of empathy and be like, geez, that's bloody tough. How good that you actually know that that's happening. Because a lot of people don't know that that's happening. So it sounds like you're on top of it in that regard. And then I'd probably go into help mode. Can I take the kids so you guys can have some more time together?
Amazing.
But that's all I do. Like
that's all you do. You say that as if it's not.
Well, no, but like I wouldn't have any great advice. I'd probably let them talk a bit more and ask a few more questions, but I'd be like, yeah, do you want me to take the kids?
Yeah, beautiful. I know, mate. So that's the thing, isn't it? Because why are you taking the kids? Why would you take Evie and Charlie?
To give the parents time to get on the same page.
Yeah.
And have a chat. and just try and work it through. Not like just to go out and have a good time, but actually I'd probably, this would be stretching, this would be you. I'd be gentler, but I'd be like, make sure you use the time not to just go out and get drunk and have a great time. I'd be stretching here, Billy, but I'd be like, just make sure you try and get to the bottom of some of this stuff or start the process, because like I'm guilty of this. Like you do that thing where you just go out and have a good time and you don't address the thing that you I'm sorry, I'm giving way too much advice on something I shouldn't be doing, but that's kind of what I'd be doing. I'd be like, try and like solve this. Not like, oh, you can't go and have fun. That's not what I'm saying. Or maybe it is like try and reconnect. I've really dug a hole here, Billy. But what I'm saying is like I want them to try and make it better would be my thing. Like try and get to the bottom of what the thing is. I don't know if I've stuffed up.
No, it's beautiful, mate, because this is why you're such a protective, amazing friend, because you're like, what can I do to help? You didn't go in judgmentally. You kind of started with empathy. You were like, practically, how can I help? I'll take the kids.
Mate, home life is so complex for everyone really differently. Like I wouldn't know. If you're at that point, I can tell how tough it is. I feel like I do a good job of prioritising that. I find it so tough. I just do. Not my kids are bad or this and that, but I just find that the balance, the width is so tough. And if someone's at that point with their partner, I'm like, you don't need advice, you know? Like, I can't tell you anything. You figured out you need to figure out, like, but just go figure it out.
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing about this question is I don't want it to end, and neither does he. And so what your advice is actually really good. You've got to find some protected space to sit down and talk about this. Now, there's a chance they'll benefit from some guided therapy as well around this stuff, because that can be really beneficial as well. So I think just picking that, how do we protect some time? Like, you know, that we can ask someone to look after the kids, do it, you know, take a day off work when they're at school, whatever it is, or at childcare, and then just sit down and talk about it. And do it gently, do it compassionately, but do it for the goal of, I want this to be a better parenting experience for both of us. So I think it's really important.
Yep. Hello, Billy and Nick. We really liked the pod this week. Such a good way to reflect on the lens we look at our family through and sharpen the focus in some areas. You guys are legends. Here's what we came up with our PERMA. Positive emotions. Top 3 positive emotions in our house are love, joy, and unified. We have 2 small rituals that encompass all 3. Every morning before someone leaves the house, we have a washing machine hug. We all stand together for a hug and swivel back and forth like a washing machine. The second our 3-year-old daughter made up, right before the shower time, she strips off and runs around the house, flashing her bottom to be chased by each family member. We call it the nudie bum run. The joy is palpable.
It's amazing. We do the nudie Rudy run. He just does hot laps of the house. And I'm like, go do the nudie Rudy run. Mummy's in the kitchen. And she like runs through and then we all get excited.
Anything to get him in the bath, right? Whatever it takes. Relationships. We're stressed about this one, mainly because both myself and my husband know we worry that deep down, perhaps we are not good enough. Sorry. I'll keep my personal opinion out. I don't think that's true. But anyway, I don't know those people. It's not true. They're doing such a good job. Sorry. Oh, shut up. If we are holding this mirror to ourselves, we think we teach our daughter to do the same. Our words and actions will become our children. Our daughter will have a better relationship with herself where we can model to show her how we found our way through the maze. If anyone has made it through the maze, please let us know. Engagement, accomplishment and meaning. I find these happen together. To teach our daughter about engagement, we try and model it to her. This can be difficult because she is only 3 years old. However, I began to start her on jigsaws on the floor one day. Our daughter then joined in. We made a mega fuss over each completed puzzle. Her face lit up like the fire had just been ignited. This then snowballed into challenges of bigger puzzles. She just gets into the zone and putting the pieces together. We were late to kindergarten the other day because she wanted to finish one. I took a photo and showed the educator. All the kids crowded around to see and say, wow, she glows inside and out. I feel like these are little seeds planted in her that will grow. That's where my meaning comes from. Knowing that these strong foundations will guide her, but also spread to others that she meets. I find my meaning in this place. However, we couldn't think how to build meaning into her life. So we brainstormed and we came up with Bruce the chicken. Bruce is a chicken puppet that we use to tell our daughter bedtime stories. We have commandeered Bruce to be the meaning bird. We've trialled Bruce this week, telling our daughter a few special things she does for the family before we sleep. Mostly ends up in the chicken farting and lots of giggles. But I think it could be useful to speak to her on this level. Thanks again, guys. This is a stellar pod.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
That's great examples.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The meaning one, yeah, that's a tough one to nail, and I think they've nailed it.
Yeah. So there's the guy who came up with a lot of this. It's really interesting. So I'll probably mispronounce this, but he's a Hungarian-American psychologist, passed away a few years ago, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he was like an 8-year-old when this World War II happened.
Gotcha.
And he actually looked around and saw like so many people like struggling and all those things. And he was one of the founders of positive psychology.
Gotcha.
And he talks about like that goal for meaning and purpose as almost like this search for the reason to live. And he talked about autotelic activities. What that means is like something that you do just for the purpose of doing it. And so finding like that's what the puzzle is. The puzzle is like I'm doing this not so much to complete the puzzle, but to enjoy the moment of it, and finding those opportunities for our kids to just be in the zone, in that flow is really helpful, but it also helps them find meaning. And he would talk about like 5th century BC in the like Temple of Apollo, there's like these maxims that are written there. And it's, this is a long time ago. People were obviously thinking about these Greek philosophers, and one of them is know thyself. It's this beautiful thing that all of us are trying to still figure out. Like I reckon it took me in my late 30s, I reckon, to start learning that. But what I want Evie to do is to feel safe to explore who she is. And whatever it is, it's safe. And we talked about this, I reckon, 50 episodes ago about the kids choose who they are. We don't decide who they are. And these opportunities of flow and positive emotions and relationships really guide that purpose and meaning that kids find. And so what you want with Winifred and Ronnie is how do they learn who they are? How do they genuinely learn who they are, feel comfortable and have opportunities that once they know themselves, they get a way to outlet that, succeed, accomplish, contribute.
It's going to take a bloody long time.
Like ages. But it's just, this is the point. Like how do we actually scaffold, guide, support? So our trick as families is finding the right balance between challenge and support. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
enough stretch that they're engaged.
Bang. Enough stretch. So it's all support, they don't move. All challenge, they'll fall down. So the trick is with everything that we're trying to do with our kids is how do we find the right balance? And it's really important in meaning. How do I help you pursue that thing that isn't stretching you too much? But if I'm stretching you and you're failing, it's often because the support's not high enough.
Gotcha.
Or the stretch is too much. I've talked about that probably every episode. But that's how you scaffold meaning.
Nice. Awesome. I like it. Well done. Hey, Billy, firstly, I love the podcast. I only discovered it recently. I've been binge listening during my evening runs. I've learned so much about child development and how to support our kids. Your most recent episode, Groundhog Day, was incredibly thought-provoking. I can't not say it that way. I'm a mum of 4 young kids under 6 and work full-time as a surgeon. I would say that these roles form the 2 major parts of my identity. To the outsider, it looks like I have my whole life together. However, on the inside, it often feels like I'm drowning in the day-to-day. The daily grind of caring for 4 kids whilst maintaining a large clinical workload can be taxing. I am not depressed and take care of myself, making time for exercise and relationships outside of work and family, but the balance is hard. My children are my whole world. They are my greatest joy and bring the most meaning of my life. Likewise, being a surgeon is such a massive part of my identity. Being able to treat members of our community brings me an enormous sense of meaning and accomplishment. Being part of a team and being involved in the training of future surgeons is also a large part of what brings meaning to my life. The operating theatre is certainly where I find my flow state. I don't want to give up any of that either. My question is, how do I integrate these 2 parts of my life in such a way that I can actually enjoy the day-to-day? How do I stop every day feeling like Groundhog Day? I want to be the best parent I possibly can be. Billy, How do you find this balance? I have so much to be proud of and be thankful for in my life. Thanks once again for the podcast and everything you do.
Yeah, amazing. It's funny because you're the one that succeeds at this, but totally. And I can see a lot of Annalise in this person actually. Annalise is phenomenal, but she works, these like her normal day at the moment, she does 14-hour shifts and then her normal day is 11, but she wouldn't give it up for the world. She loves what she does. You know, she's in there operating, she's looking after stuff. And I think she gets that autotelic like flow state in surgery as well. Like Annalise just gets home so excited after those 14-hour shifts. I'm just like, hey, you're not exhausted. But yes, it's hard. I don't succeed at this in terms of finding balance, and I'm still figuring that out. Like I have a vision for this podcast, and AV1 have helped. There's a social media firm that we look like we nailed a partnership thanks to this amazing person who's helping us from a strategy perspective. But I'm constantly striving to get that balance. The one thing I would say that I do is that I'm really purposeful in the time that I do have with Evie, even when it's hard. I do one activity with her a week. It's a gymnastics twisters thing. It's 30 minutes. It's the only protected guaranteed time and nothing can touch it. And I try really hard because I often, when I know it's coming, I'm like, God, I've got so much to do. Like there's so much to do for the pod or other stuff. But I'm like, no. And once it starts, once I'm like, sweet, we're doing it, I'm 100% in, it's a positive thing. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, good things come when you can kind of shift your frame. And I remember the last time I was going to Twisters with her, we were cruising down the road, I was cranking up rap music and we were singing and dancing in the car. And then on the horizon, I saw some handsome rooster doing a drop off, and we cruised past Uncle Nick,
Frantic and frazzled.
And it was actually this beautiful thing because I was genuinely in this moment of just pure positive emotions.
Yeah, you looked pretty positive and enjoyable, cruising down the street, wind in the hair in the car.
Now, my justification is that, yes, most parents would have more time with their kids than I do, and I have more time with them than Annalise does. But my argument is that what we're trying to do is like role model as well, like, you know, meaning, engagement, positive things in our own lives so that Evie looks around and goes, sweet. Now, what I mean is I don't want her to become a doctor because she saw me do it or her mum do it, or I want her to get really into exercise because both me and Annalise exercise heaps.
No.
I want her to see that we kind of prioritise that stuff for ourselves and are always seeking that balance.
Yeah, because engagement's important and that sort of thing as well. Yeah,
Totally. It's a bit like, I think I'll probably mispronounce it again, but that kind of idea of Camus saying you have to imagine Sisyphus happy. Like the maze that person in the previous, he's the guy that had to roll the rock up every day.
Gotcha,
and then Hades, to punish him, would make sure that just before he gets to the top, it rolls back down. He needs to restart every time. We're all stuck in the grind. 88% of us said yes. You know, we're all caught in the maze. But the trick is, like, how do I find purpose and joy within that? So that's what entirely positive emotions and psychology is about. And Groundhog Day nails it. He doesn't know that's the way out. But he's gone through every other stage to find, I'm just going to enjoy it for the purpose of it. I'm going to find meaning in this day. It fits so beautifully, the perma concept, into what he gets to. He's like, how can I have meaning? How can I have positive experiences? He knows it's going to reset every single day, but he's not doing it to get out of it. He's doing it because he just wants to use what he has in the best way that he can. And that's what we all are trying to do. And a lot of families in clinic, we're going to hear at the end a question like, you know, the clinic is an amazing reminder of how difficult it is for some families, and the fact that they still find the way through the maze and find positive experiences and joy and relationships and meaning for these kids is phenomenal.
Yep.
But anyway, I won't soapbox too much.
That's all right. Oh, yeah. Hey, Billy, more a comment than a question on breaking cycles and wellbeing. I've been trying to practice self-compassion and talk like, this feels hard because it is hard. Anyone would find this hard. Physically holding my own hand at the same time or visualising me hugging my inner child. Almost every morning when we're trying to get out the door to daycare with a 3-nager and a 9-month-old, my self-talk can be extremely negative. I would never say it to a friend what And so why would I say it to myself? It allows me to be more present and move through the storms without flipping my lid constantly.
Amazing. What's your negative self-talk like?
Much improved.
Bang.
Oh, gotta be careful. It's improved. It was horrendous. Yeah, just started to focus on the positive things people would say about me, and then yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, amazing, mate.
Bad as as bad as it could be. It was terrible.
Lots to focus on when it comes to positive things about it.
So, lots to focus on improvements.
A lot of work to do.
Wow.
So glad to hear you starting.
Yeah,
No, but there it is. It's so hard, mate. We're our harshest critic. But I think as this person is beautifully demonstrating, you know, the relationship we have with ourselves is really important, but our kids watch us like that. If we normalise just being self-critical and harsh and talking down to ourselves, there's a risk that they will pick up that habit from us and be like, cool, that's what's normal.
Yeah, I think someone covers that a little bit here about what one of the kids says to himself, which is tough. Anyway, we'll get to that. Hey, Billy, and Nick, actually. Hi, Nick and Billy. Just listened to episode 79 and wanted to reach out and say big thank you, which I'm sure you're getting a lot of. I've had 2 wines writing this, but bear with me because I feel like I could write all day about how much value and knowledge a podcast has shoved into my head.
This person is my spirit animal because I often write the podcast with a glass of wine. The fact that someone's giving feedback with a glass of wine.
My husband and I both work full time because he lives, and sometimes I fall into a guilt trap about that in regards to our 2 boys, 2.5 and 4.5, being happily in a fantastic childcare centre 5 days a week. But I found this episode really helped me feel like despite that, our kids and us as a village are doing all right in the PERMA framework world. You know what I mean? On my lunch break listening, I found myself nodding along to all the principles of PERMA, reflecting on the 2 boys, and I found it really encouraging to hear you put words around things my husband and broader family, the village, and I are trying to set up with them. Some of the things we've had a win on are positive emotions. We've recently come out of a tricky stage with the oldest transitioning to a new childcare room where he definitely didn't have positive emotions every day. And now it shines out of him. Shines out of his ass. Seriously. Okay, sorry, I just saw that word. He and his brother are such a vibe. They are regularly laughing, being silly, strong connections, and a positive look on life everywhere. It's just a vibe. Thank you for putting words around this. Engagement. I see this a lot recently with our oldest getting into a total flow state when he does puzzles. Like 120-piece sets. He's got the tongue out, takes himself off and rips into it. Our youngest gets really into drawing and playing freely with Lego and gets happy frog legs. Oh, happy frog legs out, as we call it, sprawled out on his tummy, legs up in the air. Oh, God, that's sweet. Relationships. We're really blessed. We're really #blessed that both boys have strong ties to grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins, even though there's a 600-kilometre distance between all of us. But I also see how ties to childcare teachers and my own friends have a positive influence on them. Then there's the actual childcare gang that they get a whole other level of joy and belonging from. But then I remembered how Billy said it's their relationship with themselves that's the most important. And I thought, right. Well, I think they're loving themselves sick. I think they're loving themselves sick at the moment. So all good there. It's just a vibe. Meaning, I think at this stage, the oldest really draws meaning from being a good kid, a good, kind big brother, and part of his gang at kindy. I think the youngest is just happiest with the immediate family because his world is a bit smaller, but even things like setting the table or telling a story at dinner, the 1 week we do it, seems like, the 1 day a week we do it, seems like makes him feel 10 feet tall. Accomplishment. I see this so much with swimming like Nick talked about, or stuffing around with tennis or scooters, but also puzzles and drawing. Yeah. I really wish you both all the best in 2024. I've been sharing your podcast with our childcare centre. Lots of friends that are all teachers. Lots of friends that are all in the trenches, Parents and teachers, child psychologists, I think you deserve a TV show. Has she seen me?
Well, not many people saw me last week because we changed the cameras around, and I think it was like, where's the good-looking bloke gone?
The focus
mine was
out.
out of focus the whole time. So,
Classic.
Don't know how we go on TV. But no, beautiful messages. I just love that one. That one had to make it in. So thank you for sharing that. Beautiful practical examples.
Yeah, these are awesome. People needed examples. That's what they wanted, which is why we've included these ones. Hi, I'm trying to break generational cycles, but there's an Sorry, I'll start that again. Hi, I'm trying to break generational cycles, but there are integral people in my life that do not want or are incapable of doing so, effectively pulling me back every time I try. How do I deal with this, raising my child around them? For context, this is probably a dilemma most Eastern communal-based families deal with. I appreciate your effort and truly your work has helped me become a calmer dad.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. So I was thinking about this question and like a potential answer in PERMA. I think one thing that can be helpful, instead of like coming and approaching someone and saying you need to change who you are completely because of the negative influence you're having on my family or my kids, thinking about which of the 5 can you help with?
Specific one.
Yeah. So the cranky granddad who's always blowing up, actually, maybe you can help with engagement because you're really into fixing car engines. And I reckon that Billy would actually love to learn about it. So you're not saying change how you are with Billy.
Change
you're
your culture,
strict with
change your
him, you're always
background, change
negative,
it,
you're always
yeah,
complaining.
yeah.
You know, and then the other people, what's the positive emotion? So grandma really gets a lot of joy out of baking. Hey, do you reckon Sally could be a part of this with you? Because she's really said that she wants to learn how to bake with you. Even if she hasn't, you just set it up and go, you know. So how do you use the 5 pillars of PERMA as a conduit for that? You know, how do you support them in accomplishing things? You know, that's why it's really important that Annalise was taking like, so we're really worried about social opportunity with Evie, and that's where she's falling down a bit at the moment. So Annalise phenomenally during her maternal leave did an activity every day, and she's found these amazing relationships with kids who have the same age, and there's maybe 3 or 4 families, same age, gentle, gorgeous, sharing kids, and Evie just gets protected time with them. And that's kind of looking for where are the opportunities for that PERMA idea in the relationships. But we don't go, well, every relationship with the kid needs to facilitate and scaffold all 5 pillars of it. So how can we kind of do that and help the, you know, Billy's trying to get really good at basketball. I think it'd be really awesome if you're the person that goes to training with him because you're his uncle and you really love basketball. And it'd be really cool if you were the person to help with that. Instead of saying, change how you are with Billy.
Yep.
You're too harsh with him. You need to be a big part of his life.
Pick a
calling
focus.
him out on
Yes.
stuff. Pick a focus within the relationships. I mean, you're amazing. You've got family like this.
Yeah.
You know, Henry's folks are awesome at being like this. You know, her dad's a surgeon, but he's awesome with them. He was awesome with a vet who he's never met before. He just links up with her, walks around, enjoys something with her, elevates her positive experiences walking around the garden. It's phenomenal. Those people are probably subconsciously and unintentionally elevating kids. And so how can you shift away and grab those people that are maybe having a negative influence, but like they have to be a part of this life and bite off something that's small enough that they will swallow it and go, sweet, this is like cool. I'm not being asked to change who I am. That's too much of a conflict. But I am being asked to bring him into the garage and show him how I tinker with car engines. You know, and beautiful, help flow state, positive experiences, bonds the relationship, all of that stuff.
Yep. Love that one.
Yeah, I mean, you do this naturally, but I think if neither of I are lucky, we're both lucky we're not stuck in this. Yeah, I've got a very low tolerance for negative relationships, so I find myself in none of them for that reason. Okay. You see the best in everyone, and you have a lot of people around you because you are a good person, so I don't think you're at huge risk of that. But I think, if you're finding that your family is kind of a bit down and negative and kind of challenging, I think bite off those bits you can actually handle.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you. Hey, Billy. Hi, lovely humans. Thank you for your ongoing amazing work on the podcast, week in, week out. It is so appreciated by me and my community around us. I really loved this week's episode. I even listened a second time and took notes. Love a good acronym. I have a question about helping kids who are stuck in negative rut or cycles. I have a beautiful orchid 8-year-old who seems to easily fall back into the habit of being a bit down on himself. If he has trouble doing something doesn't go his way, or we try and talk to him about behaviours he could be improving, he often returns to the same cycle of saying, I'm stupid, it's my fault, etc. We try hard to sit with him and work through it, acknowledge the feeling and frustration, try and help him talk through it when he calms down, but often he needs to wait it out. Trying to focus on self-esteem building outside of the moment, but I wonder if there's another way that we could be helping him work through the cycle he seems to be stuck in.
So amazing. Have you ever heard about learned helplessness?
I've heard the term. I think I'd misuse it if I tried to use it.
So that research is actually around like dogs, where what they found is that if you put them in a cage they can't get out of and give them electric shocks.
Sure.
It's awful research. Give them electric shocks. A lot of them, if you eventually open the cage door, they'll just take the shock. And that's called learned helplessness.
Oh.
They just accept it. That's kind of, we often talk about flight and fight, but there's often an acceptance.
Yep.
The positive psychology is beautiful because it took that research and thought about how do we teach learned optimism.
Oh,
Now,
go on.
optimism and hope are really protective ways that we approach the world. I can probably sustain what I'm doing, even though I look like I'm drowning, because I have so much optimism and hope.
Gotcha.
And I actually use optimism in clinic. I'm like quietly optimistic, and we'll talk to it more in the last question. There's 4 components that influence learned optimism. The first is genetics and your temperament. And this is a beautiful orchid. I'm an orchid. I think orchids are awesome. They have a temperamental sensitivity that means that their environment has a huge influence on them. So the trick is, how do you use the other 3 things to influence their temperamental sensitivity? The first is how we will process and explain things that are happening. So with Winnie, when she's struggling, the way that you talk about that struggle is really important. Now, a lot of kids will internalise self-blame. It's always going to be that way. We've talked about the dysfunctional thinking, I think, in depression or anxiety. But how can you acknowledge, validate her experience and then help her process it in a way that is helpful? I think it's because we just messed up this bit. That bit was a bit hard for us. Let's go back to that and see if we can do it again when we focus a bit more on it or whatever. So how do you go beyond the just validation to an explanation of why the failure happened, or why you struggled, or why it didn't work, or why there was that social rejection or whatever that's happened on the playground? The second of the kind of 3 environmental influences is criticism. So a lot of kids are hypersensitive to criticism, especially those with sensitive temperaments like orchids. So looking around and going, is there a bit too much criticism coming in this kid's life? Now the kid decides. You might be like, there's no criticism. Everyone's just patting Winnie on the back. But what she might be sensing is that, there's criticism coming from her where it's really light or maybe not even present. She's never picked first at playgroup or whatever. She never gets picked to be the person that stands up the front or whatever. She'll take it as criticism. Yeah. So how do you look around and see where are those negative opportunities? The 4th thing about learned optimism is how do you make sure that the ratio of mastery to helplessness is tipped really heavily in the mastery sphere or favour? And the way that you do that is think about, in most of their experiences, are they having success? How do we make sure that we have a lot more of language around positive affirmations, and making sure that kids most of the time hear stuff that's good about them, that gives them positive feedback, that reinforces what they're doing? And we know a lot of communities that are really struggling, the ratio is there is very little positive affirmation happening for these kids. Now, it's because the kid's drowning, they're making life really tough, they're really struggling with stuff, their behaviour is really challenging. But that's where the positive psychology learned optimism comes in. How do we give that to kids? It's a really important bit. Most of the success, as this parent sounds like they're already doing, in building self-esteem comes outside of the thing that they're really struggling with at the moment. How do they have mastery there? In the moment, I think just, going in and doing that validation, but then helping them process it in a way that isn't, I'm hopeless, I'm never good enough, I'll never master this, and gently challenging it is a really important thing that we do, which is really called cognitive restructuring.
Yeah, I like that little bit of challenge.
Yeah, how can you gently challenge and say, actually, maybe it wasn't because you're hopeless. Maybe it's because we just didn't focus on it enough.
Yeah.
Or maybe we jumped a bit. Or maybe it's because we're not thinking about what that other person might not have been thinking about. Oh, they don't want you on the team. It might just be because they're really good friends with that other person. And you think if, Samantha was here, she would have picked you because you guys are really good friends, whatever. But how do you gently help them process it? But watch them. Don't lecture them. Watch them in that conversation and change your feedback based on the responses they're giving you, what their body language is doing, they're relaxing, they're opening up, all that stuff.
Okay. Cool. 2 more questions, Billy. Just thought I'd share a quick story to illustrate the positive impact you had on me. I've recently found the pod in the last few weeks and have been going deep on a binge. Your chemistry and deep mutual affection shines through and is really engaging aspect of the podcast. However, despite only listening for a short time, it has immediately affected me. I'm a father of 4 myself, but it actually relates to the interactions with our kids. I was in the gym today and midway through my poorly timed session when a ton of high school kids came in post-school breakup. A group of 3 or 4 young high schoolers, maybe 13 or 15, took up residence next to me and started doing chin-ups. They seemed pretty harmless and they were having a good time, but they were pushing gym etiquette a bit by coming into my space, leaning on weights, etc. I could tell they were more naive and being a bit thoughtless rather than having a bad attitude, and was typical of a couple of other groups of teens around the same age who had taken up residence in various spots in the gym. I want to illustrate how your podcast has affected my thinking. My immediate response was to take an aggressive attitude towards these kids and reassert my boundaries and assert dominance. In a perverse way, I thought the best way they would learn a lesson was by getting a bit of a scare from a bigger guy in the gym. I'm pleased to say that I was very quick and observed that reaction and was able to reframe my thinking about these kids along the lines that I was looking at some kids that needed some skill development. What are the norms in the gym space? Rather than punishment, it immediately generated an innate kindness in me and my thinking toward them, and I actually physically relaxed as a result. I felt a compassion and celebration for the kids being in the gym and giving it a go that overrode my frustration at their mistakes. As it happened, the kids finished what they were doing and moved away before I needed to engage them. But I just wanted to share what an impact your podcast has had on my thinking and interactions. It also made me reflect that I had the ability to have a significant impact on all sorts of kids, for good and bad, with what I would see as a relatively minor interaction. I reflected that had I behaved aggressively towards the kids, I would have potentially turned them off going to the gym for a long time. Conversely, if I demonstrated kind and respectful education in that moment, I could have very well supported positive feelings in them towards the space. Either way, it's not lost to me that I have the opportunity to have a big impact on a lot of kids' lives if I choose to take it. Thanks to your podcast, I'm now looking at kids completely differently, looking at their strengths first in both my thinking and my interactions. Your innate love for all kids, empathy for parents, and drive to improve lives shines through. I can't help but to have taken it on. Keep up the amazing work. You're making the world a better place.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And I struggle with that. I struggle. I see stuff and I'm just like annoyed and frustrated and I go straight to the fiery redhead. But the person being able to stop and be like, hang on, how can I actually have a positive influence on these kids? How can I think what's actually going on? They're probably more naive, is amazing. Because I think, there's all these kids running around being much more antisocial than that. And I think it's very easy to be punitive and be like, there should be consequences.
Yeah.
That's how you'll teach them.
Yeah, that's how they'll learn them.
Yeah, but it's wild and it's amazing. The influence, I ride into work every day and I've got this 45 minutes of downtime, but it's quite funny because my day is often predicted by what that ride is like. And there's this one guy who really aggressively rides along the path, but he says happy Tuesday or whatever day it is to every person he passes. It's like every time I see him, I have a better day because I'm like, this guy is just literally saying 2 words and he changes my mood every single time I see him. And I'm sure he's doing it intentionally. And it's just this beautiful influence that you can have. This guy, I see him a couple of times a week for 5 seconds, and he says 2 words, and he changes my day. Like, it's, the way, the influence we have on the people around us, even like not our own kids and not the teachers. But that's why it's amazing to hear there's all these people that listen who are quite young and are like, I don't really have any kids in my life, or I'm an uncle, or I'm going to be a future parent. But this is how we change the world without getting too cheesy and soapboxy. It's just how we treat each other.
A bit of pay it forward, Billy, just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that movie will never make the cut, but with Haley Giles, never seen it.
Never seen it.
Never seen it.
Maybe we're missing something. Hey, Billy, we're on to our last question here.
bang.
Last one. Guys, I'm up to date, finally, and so pleased you did Groundhog Day. I've been applying PERMA already and finding it a really helpful tool. My question would be, what if you have no choice but being stuck in Groundhog Day due to medical issues? As outlined in my previous email, my middle son has multiple health conditions and requires medication and physio every day. It's exhausting for us as parents, and he is understandably resistant to this. He hides his medication and does everything he can to get out of physio. Together, we've come up with some strategies to get him doing physio. We use the Explosive Child Plan B framework, Dr. Billy, and his preferred option is physio powers the TV, where if he stops, then the TV pauses. But it turns out it's also us as parents that need some sort of carrot too. I had a migraine this week and just not the energy to get him doing his physio, and can already see an impact in his function, which is heartbreaking. We don't have much of a village, possibly because despite being a friendly person and the first to step in and offer help, I find it really hard to ask for help when I need it. Something to work on. Since my last email, we found out that on top of his hypermobility fatigue, weak enamel, flat feet, low iron, severe hay fever, he also now has low tone hearing loss in one ear, and his paediatrician has decided that muscular dystrophy can't be ruled out on the strength of a blood test alone. So the next step is a muscle biopsy, which is honestly devastating. Good news is that we finally managed to find 2 local physios who will take the burden off us for 1 day a week. But sometimes I find the positivity of these people hard to balance against the scaremongering we've had in the doctor's office. We've been told he needs to do physio every day until he's grown, and that if he doesn't, he'll end up in a wheelchair. We've been told he can't do roller skating, ice skating, skiing, or any other contact sport. I just find it really hard to see this in positive light. How do you break out of your own Groundhog Day when you've got a sick kid? You guys are total legends. Keep up the amazing work.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So that's actually the person that over a year ago gave me Groundhog Day. So they sent in a really beautiful story and said, you got to do Groundhog Day. This is how I feel. And I've always had it in my back pocket. And then when I thought I'd really like to do something around positive psychology, it just fits so well. But, it's that person is actually the origin of this whole topic. So it's really tough. It's really tough. And they talked about, I think in the previous email, about like the kind of negativity of the doctor who's like, they can't do this, they can't do that, we can't rule out this, we've got to do this, these are all the problems, they'll never do this, they'll be in a wheelchair if you stuff it up. And the allied health specialists who are phenomenal, like the occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, speech pathologist, who have that like genuine optimism. They're just like, no, we're going to get better at this stuff. We're going to get stronger. We're going to get better at all those things. And I push back against the kind of deficit model of, being a doctor of like, we need to find all of the problems. And I think it's a good lesson for all of us clinically, but also for everyone who's around kids, is that we sometimes focus so much on like, I need to fix the problems, I need to overcome your challenges. And what we actually should be doing is, as much as possible, building and elevating strengths. And that narrative around kids is what this parent is doing. It's what the allied health specialists are doing in supporting this kid about where their strengths are. And I meet kids like this every day who severe intellectual disability, they're really struggling with mental illness, like lots of things that are against them. And what I'm trying to do is find where is all the positive experiences, where's the joy, where's the meaning, where are the relationships, everything that we've talked about. But it can be really hard. I think when the parent is like, imagine having hanging over you, like if you don't do physio every day, they'll be in a wheelchair. And then being like, this kid doesn't want to do physio. Yeah. They hate the physio. It's this negative part of their life. I'm exhausted. I've got a migraine.
Can't imagine.
So awful. Like, and we talk a lot about just validating that experience, but also thinking about, yeah, this is actually too much for me. I adore this kid. I'm dedicating my entire life to them, but I actually can't take the anxiety and pressure of like, you know, this is what's happening. And they talked about like how they're getting some more physio time in and resources for that and all those things. But actually realizing it's not you when you're drowning. Like a lot of us have so much self-blame and go, another parent would be able to do physio every day. Another parent wouldn't be getting migraines. Another parent wouldn't be, you know, feeling like this is unfair. But actually all of us would be struggling, if not more so than this parent is. So it's really important. But I would say like one thing that I do, so we talk about this, and I might have talked about it before on the podcast, a really important thing we can do with all kids and families is be quietly enthusiastic. And I think we've spoken about this, but it fits here beautifully because how can we be quietly enthusiastic and genuinely enthusiastic about the future for this kid? And it's not about like ignoring the wheelchair risk and all that stuff. But every single kid I've ever met in 20 years, I've found something to be enthusiastic about. Every single parent I've met, I see a lot of kids through parents, through child protection, where there's been awful stuff in the past, and I can find something that's positive. Now, I might have talked about it before. Often the parent, when they hear that, will break down and start sobbing and say, no one's ever told me anything positive about my parenting journey. All I've had is people trying to catch me out, trying to take my kids off me again, trying to do that. And if we think that that is how we improve people in terms of how they parent, that is wrong. It is the opposite. What we need to do is understand we're all humans. None of us are better than each other. Some of us are holding a higher burden than everyone else. And what we need to do is actually elevate each other. Find the positives in every single kid and parent we meet and elevate them. And then like you said, mate, going back to how beautiful a friend you are, how can I help? Let me take the kids. You know, that's awesome. And that's what we've all got to look around and go, how can I actually help out the people that are around me? And that's where a lot of this comes from, is like, how can we think about the contribution that we're making to our community? The beautiful thing is it role models for our kids where our meaning comes from. Like we do this, but I've been starting doing more talks at school and it's amazing. It's my sweet spot because I'm like, love meeting kids in clinic, but they've waited 2 years to see me. You know, 65% of kids with a mental illness in this country will never get to any clinician, including GPs. So it feels like it's not the answer to everything. The podcast is beautiful and we get all these messages and everything gets read. I'm completely overwhelmed in replying, but all these beautiful affirmations. But when I'm in a room with a group doing a talk, a parenting talk or educators or whatever, and I'm doing that really regularly now, it's phenomenal because we kind of become this community that we're like, how do we all do this better together? Let's learn together. And that's what we all should be trying to do, not looking around and going, criticizing other people. I'm a better parent than that person. I can't believe they're using that approach. The risk in that is we just further isolate people and make them feel crap about themselves as parents, and we actually reduce their capacity to improve. It's a really hard thing. You and I do this with each other. Like we try and improve how we parent each other. I see you mate. You know, Annalise is on a 14-hour shift and you just rock up to help with dinner time. You know what I mean? I'm hopeless at asking for help like this parent talks about. Hopeless. I see it as a failure. If I ask for help with someone, I see it as a failure. I love helping people. Makes me feel makes me feel like a good person.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
But that's the challenge in it, is how do we do that? And this is the pathway that pushes back. Positive psychology pushes back against a deficit model. What's wrong? What's the label? All of that stuff. And this is a more useful tool than I have than my script pad or me writing down this child has autism or whatever. Thinking about how I can harness the evidence around positive psychology is one of the best things I get to do in clinic.
Awesome. We're done, Dr. Billy.
Yep.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Is it you?
I'm not hurting anywhere on the bike. Yeah, okay, that's a wrap, people. Thank you so much for everyone that sent through questions. We hope we got to your questions, or I hope through the process of Billy distilling so many hundreds of questions, we were able to capture what you wanted to know. We'll have part 2. It's always longer, but it's there for a reason, to give people a lot of in-depth understanding on specific topics, and I think Billy's done another great job of that this week.
So have you, mate.
No, stop. We're going to be back for episode 81 in another fortnight. Don't know what it is yet.
Neither do I. Just head above water this week, mate.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
a tomorrow problem.
Yeah. Maybe we start with a movie we like and then just weave something into it. It's where I like to start. Just
Clueless it is.
Yeah. What to do when you don't know. Awesome work, Billy. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for your questions. Hope you enjoy it, and I will speak to you soon.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.